What's going on, everybody? Doc and Sloth back again. A little bit more Halo Wars 2. We're going to be focusing on Atriox today. We're going to do a deck build on him. We just shot up a video of the Shipmaster, so if that's one of your favorite leaders, go ahead and hop over there, check that out. And we're going to actually probably do all the leaders as over the next couple days as we kind of roll out. But Atriox is by far my favorite. Up on screen right now, I have my base deck that are running, and this is just the deck I've been using for a while. Had quite a bit of success with it. Like I said, this leader is my favorite out of the group, specifically for the banished, but overall as well. And I think a lot of the same principles as the Shipmaster build we did, if you did check that out, kind of apply here. But we'll run through pretty quick, just kind of talk each card selection, and then maybe hop over to the actual card library and take a look at some of the things that we might replace, because I think I have all but 2 cards capable of throwing into this deck. So as we get started real quick, I'll go through the first couple units relatively quickly. You guys can see there I have the chopper up, quick 20 energy unit. Again, this is all predicated on the fact of I like to be able to go, and Sloth will tell you, I'm kind of the energy grab guy. In the 2v2 and 3v3 games, that's really my main focus. Obviously, I'm going to help lock down points, send in armies to fight for those points. But in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking grab energy, grab energy, grab energy. So I throw the chopper in here. I think it's a good starting unit, easy to drop at 20, very fast, matches speed with the Warthogs for the UNSC side. Very good against infantry, actually, but it is a little soft. Can shoot vehicles and air, so it is kind of multi-versatile there. But really, just it's there for me to be able to drop, grab energy, or go and kind of be sneaky and grab a point really throughout the rest of the game.
Yeah, the chopper is one that you'll see kind of reflect what I feel like Atriox's best style is, aggressive sacrifice. He can be played very offensively and very defensively, sometimes at the same time. But in this particular build we're going to go over, like Doc said, it's going to be a kind of energy grab, kind of hold back on defense, but you're going to see a lot of kind of low energy units compared to some of the other builds that we've made, and that's because we're going to be okay with just giving up units. If that chopper dies, it takes 3 seconds to get 20 energy, so he could be easily replaced. But he's going to serve his purpose, and that's going to be to increase our energy production as quickly as possible.
Absolutely, absolutely. So hopping over to the Hunters, I don't think we really need to talk about these. Absolutely have them in your deck. Any deck, any banished leader you have needs to have these in it, just for the sole fact of how strong they are at taking down vehicles. So really not a whole lot else to say there. Good 40 energy unit, great pair team to drop in. Same thing with the Engineer. We've talked in the Shipmaster build just really about how good this unit is. The fact that it can heal everything to include air units. It has that overshield ability. It detects, so if they are bringing in, anything, Prowling Reavers or anything like that, you're going to be able to target it as long as this guy's floating up. So really those 2 units I think are a must. Got to have them. As we hop over, we'll talk the Banshee really quick. A decent air unit, pretty good. Good against vehicles, has the capability to shoot infantry and air, and it kind of holds its own. A lighter health unit, so that's just one consideration. But when you kind of look at this deck overall, you see the top, really the top first 8 cards are under 100 energy, and that's kind of by design. So you can actually get a small group of a Hunter, an Engineer, Banshee, and maybe a Locust together, and that's going to actually be a pretty formidable army. That's going to have a good versatility against everything, and really be able to go in and get the fight for you. And then the Banshee, again, good air unit, good air-to-air combat, and just a good overall unit to kind of get out and be quick with.
Yeah, that's one I feel like to to lean on against air. We're gonna see a pretty common theme when playing as the Banished is they don't particularly fare well as far as armies as a whole against air units. There's a lot of not being able to touch air units, and there's a lot of having a disadvantage against air units. So having the Banshee at least do some equal damage is nice, especially if supported well by the engineer. And we'll kind of go over the more focused anti-air here in a moment.
Right, so hopping over, Bloodfuel Locust, me and Sloth were actually talking about this just right before we started this recording, but this unit, we've said it a few times, I think they're going to have to look at its range, its health. This thing is absolutely brutal. The regular Locust is very good too. It just doesn't have the Siphon ability. It does still have the shield, but the range on this thing, and you'll kind of see how this deck kind of folds out as we get to the top tier. But range is going to be your best friend with this deck overall. The Bloodfuel Locust, the 2 Blisterbacks we have, and then if you're lucky enough, like I am, to have Atriox, those 4 units are going to give you such a range and such a damage capability that once you lock a few of those things down over a point, you're probably not losing that point unless they bring literally all of their units. So if you have the Bloodfuel Locust, absolutely throw it in. And at 60 energy, honestly, that's a steal for how good and how much damage this thing can absorb.
Yeah, totally agree on a lot of those points. With Atriox especially, you'll see us focus on A. A is kind of off a little bit to the side, whereas B and C are clumped together. And A is really a very easily defensible position that has a lot of energy drops around it. So you'll see us set up a Blisterback, an Enduring Blisterback, and a Bloodfuel Locust or two, because of the sight lines and because of the distances they have to cross. That becomes a very strong position of power for Atriox in general, and especially this deck build.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Ironclad Hunters, we didn't touch on the Hunters much because they're awesome. So just double what I said for the Hunters and add it to the Ironclad Hunters. For an extra 30 energy, having the guard ability means they're literally soaking up all the damage. You pair Ironclad Hunters really with your Banshee and Engineer and maybe another set of Hunters, and minus the fact that you might have a little trouble with air units, anything else is probably getting mowed down by this. These things absolutely destroy Scorpions or really any opposing vehicle, and are definitely something to have in this deck. And again, at 70 energy, you're getting that relatively quickly, especially if you have the mindset of taking energy from the very beginning. So dropping a couple of these in at a time, bolstering up your point, or really just throwing them in front of some Blisterbacks is really just going to help soak up a lot of damage for you.
Yeah, the big thing with them is that guard ability. They protect your entire army. So that's what we kind of decided upon. We're doubling up on hunters here. So you will see we have the 40 hunters and the 70 energy hunters. But the Ironclad are just too good to not have consideration. And we've brought it up a couple times, the not particularly focused attention on taking out air units, but you pair up those Ironclad Hunters with a Banshee and maybe an Engineer. The Engineer's sitting there healing up the Hunters, and the Banshee's not taking damage. So that's a fight that you're probably going to win in most cases, just with 3 relatively low energy units.
Right, it's like synergy. I think that's the buzzword we're looking for, is synergy. As we kind of roll over,
that's
the Marauder is another good. He's a decent unit, capable of hitting everything. I like him for his speed, and at 70 energy, he actually does have a good bit of health. So again, another enemy or another troop that you can drop that the enemy will have to kind of consider. Very good at grabbing energy. Again, that seems to be a common theme here, and there's a reason. But another troop too that can go in and get in a fight for you. And honestly, there have been quite a few times where I'll drop a Marauder and some Ironclad Hunters together, and they can actually do some work again too. So there's a lot of good pairings up, specifically with these lower tier, lower energy units that make a couple units together work really, really well. In the Shipmaster build, we talked pretty heavily about the Prowling Reaver, and that really just continues through this. If you don't have the Prowling Reaver, absolutely throw in a regular Reaver. These things absolutely destroy air units. They are awesome, but if you do have the Prowling Reaver, it is definitely worth the extra energy cost for the shield, the cloak, and the detectability. These things, I can't say enough about them, and this is really where you start to see the deck round itself out a little bit, because again, with the cloak ability, and say you got them behind some Ironclad Hunters, these things again are also just going to be destroying air units for you. So again, those little synergy teams of units that you're going to be able to drop real quick really is kind of what this deck is about, on top of being able to go and very quickly get energy.
Yeah, the Reaver is the Vulture Eater, and we kind of talked about not having a lot of units dedicated to anti-air, and it's just because the Prowling Reaver is so good against air.
Right.
We kind of look at the UNSC side with the Wolverines being able to attack air. Do not feel like the Wolverines tear up air units like the Reaver does, especially the Prowling Reaver with the shield, the cloak, and the detect. That trifecta is fantastic for that unit. I called it the linchpin of my Shipmaster build. I would go out on a limb and say it's probably the linchpin of the defense, at least, on this build as well.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Wraith, I won't focus on too much. Again, another great unit. This is one card that I don't have that is swappable. If you do have the Ironclad Wraith, just like the Ironclad Hunters, absolutely 100% make the swap. Again, the extra 30 energy it costs for the Ironclad, and we'll show it in the card library here as soon as we get done. The guard ability just is absolutely worth it. But the Wraith, good all-around unit, strong, has a shield, good capability for offense, and definitely, again, paired up with even regular Hunters or Ironclad Hunters, this thing is going to do some damage. These last three cards is kind of where we get to really, again, the core synergy of the deck, and this is your top end. So we have the Blisterback and the Enduring Blisterback. I'm going to focus on the Enduring Blisterback just because obviously they're really the same unit minus the Last Stand ability. Again, we talked in the Shipmaster build, lock these things down. Get them into siege mode when you can. And do also remember that they are an air unit. So if an opposing banished leader starts to bring hunters their way and you got them in siege mode, they move from siege mode pretty quickly. Once you unlock them, they'll float up into the air. And they are pretty capable of handling themselves. The extra energy cost, 40 energy cost for the Enduring Blisterback, 100% worth the Last Stand ability, because the units it drops in, a lot of people really don't see. They might see the Blisterback. Hey, I got to send some units over. I got to get I got to get that thing destroyed because it's literally raining missiles on my team. They'll kill it, and then the one or two units that maybe they sent over end up probably staying there because they're not paying attention. And then the infantry units that are left usually end up killing the unit that's sitting there. So the crazy thing is with these two, getting them both and getting these two set up next to each other, overlooking a point, I mean, it's formidable. You throw a Bloodfuel Locust in there, and really nobody's touching that point.
Yeah, the defensive capabilities of this deck, once you have some points, the Blisterbacks and the Locusts, and even Atriox is chosen, who we'll get to in just a second. In between B and C, I gave the example of over top of A to kind of consume energy, but in between B and C, they're going to cover a huge range, and they're going to absolutely do work, not just covering those ranges, but just really tearing up units before units can even get close. I love the enduring Blisterback. The frustration for me is sometimes when a unit's biggest advantage is after that unit is dead. We kind of talked about that in the unstable Banshee and the Shipmaster build. I don't feel like that's the big thing with the enduring Blisterback though. I don't want to kind of badmouth it, because I feel like that's more of an advantage should it go down more so than its best capability, because the Blisterback itself is such a good unit.
Right, and the nice thing too, again, is if you're dropping a couple of these over a point, and that happens to be the one that gets killed first, those last stand units end up becoming your other Blisterback defense, either buying you time to get them out of siege mode and up and move them, or again, even just kill the unit while the Blisterback still continues to rain missiles down on the guys trying to take the point. So again, I can't harp on enough team aspect of those two units with the blood fuel. And then again, we have a very low front energy cost for this. So don't be afraid to sacrifice, like Sloth said at the beginning, sacrifice those low units, those choppers, even those hunters of the Banshee to extend the range on your Blisterbacks. The Blisterback doesn't have to see it. A unit just has to be in the area to see, and you'll be very surprised by how far these units can fire those missiles.
Yeah, give them LOS if at all possible. And one thing that I think you'll notice, which you may notice right up front, no powers. This set is straight units. So if you decide to to try and use this particular build and to mess with it, spit those units out. Army size is going to be a really big help to you because there are so many low cost units. The top end is really powerful, but you can use kind of the low end to help make that push to get some energy and to get to the end game. And army size is going to be great. You're going to be able to outpace most other decks because most other decks kind of the standard seems to be 2 powers. So we're completely foregoing that here. So build up those armies.
Yeah, absolutely. And again with that, this deck is really focused around that energy grab. So being able to, we've talked this in a couple other videos. You guys got to see gameplay. If you haven't, check out our Halo Wars 2 playlist, our 2v2 or 3v3. Again, we run a very similar strategy between the two of us, regardless of what mode we're playing. But grabbing that energy, this deck makes it very easy again because you have capable units that can go get it quick and cheap, and then you can leave those units at those energy spots. That's something I don't see a lot of people do. I think because they think they need the units to defend points, and that is true. But there becomes a certain point, a couple minutes into the game, once points have kind of traded back and forth a little bit, people are kind of rebuilding the armies. I have 3 or 4 units sitting in sitting in the energy spawn spots. The energy drops in. I always see the other team, they're like, okay, I need to send some units to go get them. But by the time they realize that and they start moving units that they've just called in, I've probably already destroyed the energy and grabbed it. And then that's where you really start to pick up the pace. The last unit that we'll talk about, and this is obviously swappable if you don't have something, but really for me this is the linchpin, and this is the reason that I like Atriox so much, because of how good Atriox Chosen is. You can see stats across the board. I mean, green against everything. This hero at 210, he's about middle of the road for all the leaders. I think he's the highest banished leader by about, I think, 10 energy. The shock ability is really cool, reducing their armor. The thing with him is range. Like, I cannot say it enough. The range is absolutely huge, and this unit pairs really well with the Blisterback team and the Bloodfuel Locust. But there are a lot of times, Sloth will tell you that I'll get into a game, I'll drop a couple small units, I'll focus on some energy grab, maybe help go into contest a point, and then I'll get this guy into my hand, and I will literally just wait until I get 210 energy. I will play him with an engineer, and I will move the 2 of them around the battlefield, literally just killing all of the opposing players' units. Especially early in the game, people are starting to call in Scorpions and a few units. This guy will literally sit back when you don't even think he's going to be able to see them, and he will just start shooting, and he does area damage as well. So I've seen him take down like groups of Banshees or groups of Hunters, literally standing next to each other without them even moving. He does have a shield, so he is extremely versatile, and he has a ton of health too. That engineer really is there just for my own, personal satisfaction.
And the detect.
Yes, and the detect. But honestly, it's very rare that I take this leader in, and the engineer has to work a whole lot. And honestly, with these heroes, I feel like being able to kind of micromanage them a little bit, move them around the battlefield, have them get some kills, pull them back, get them healed at your base, and then move them to a different point. You do that 1 or 2 times, that's allowing your team not only to build up their forces, your team to collect energy, but also the harassment just literally makes the points that much easier to take. So 100% if you got him, put him in there. If you don't have him, there are a couple options we'll jump over to real quick. But real quick, I also want to talk, like we did in the Shipmaster build, the 2 starting armies. Bulletproof is 100% the one I would use. The fact that it comes with Ironclad Hunters, you got Elite Rangers in there, and then the 2 mobs of Grunts. The 4 units, that's a great split for me, again, with an energy grab focus. You can send really the Hunters and the Elites together. They're very well capable of contesting a point. And then the 2 mobs of Grunts, awesome at grabbing energy right from the beginning. You do have the Warlord set up with the 2 Banshees and the Marauder. Not bad, not the best in my opinion, again, because the Banshees are a little soft. And then you really don't have any detectability with this. So if somebody's bringing in Prowling Marauders against you, they're really just probably going to kill your Banshees before you even notice it.
Yeah, that detectability on those elites is super awesome. When rolling with the hunters, kind of like you were talking about. And if when we're looking at the bottom left here on the starting armies, don't be afraid to hit the right trigger, and you can kind of see some things you might not have noticed, or kind of special things about those groups. So obviously they're the Ironclad Hunters. We can see the guard ability on that. But switching over to the Warlord, we just see the Marauder and we just see 2 Banshees. So that it very much feels like, oh, I just got 2 kind of normal units. Whereas Bulletproof, you feel like you're starting with a small army and a strong one at that.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. So we're gonna hop over just real quick to the or the card library. Again, obviously I don't have 100% of the cards unlocked. I think we're just missing a few, but I do want to highlight 1 or 2 things that we kind of talked about just to show you. Eradication, that's a spell, or a power, excuse me. I always want to call them spells. That's a power that Atriox uses. This would be a great substitute if you do have it and don't happen to have Atriox or the Enduring Blisterback. The amount of damage this thing causes is absolutely huge. It essentially will cover the entirety of a point. It drops down essentially 6 glassing beams. It works them from outer to inner. Once they connect in the middle, there's a huge explosion at the end, and literally anything inside of it is going to be destroyed. We talked in a couple other videos about this, though. The only one thing about this power, while it is extremely powerful, fast units and even medium fast units, if you see this coming in quick enough and you're able to grab those units, you can pull them out a lot of times before they get destroyed. They'll probably take some damage, but if you get them out before the final blast of this power, you're probably saving them, to be honest.
Yeah, that's probably something they should probably look at speeding up a little bit. I think Atriox is going to get the most tweaking of anybody, of all the leaders we've seen, at least, because Eradication is a little slow. His Chosen is so very strong, right. And together with the Bloodfuel Locust, it just makes that unit that much more kind of unbearable. So I think we'll get some balances and stuff. That'll be interesting to see. But that is a good point. The speed is a little bit slower than I would like to see. There are a couple other units, or I should say cards, because most of them are actually not units, for Atriox that I like, especially in a very defensive build. 90 energy gets us the Spike Turret. That is actually a temporary turret, great for holding points that the other team is kind of overwhelming. It just kind of contests, has a ton of health, and it's actually considered a building. So unless the other team is carrying those locusts, Nobody else in the game right now is really focused on anti-building, which makes sense, but that's kind of like a little trump card to play there. So it is temporary, doesn't do a ton of damage, but it's kind of great for just pissing the other guys off, and kind of holding a point for a lot longer. My other favorite thing with Atriox is only 40 energy, and that's the Scorch Mines. Um, I see a large energy coming. I do carry those on a alternate Atriox deck. They're placeable. They're basically three clusters of mines, and they're shielded, or sorry, cloaked. Pardon me. For the first 90 seconds they're on the field, so the other team won't even see them. So as long as you have line of sight on the area you want to drop them, you drop them. Let those kind of soften up the energy army. Before the battle even starts. So those are two that if you do want to look a little bit more towards the kind of power versus unit ratio that we had set up. Eradication's a little bit hard to get, maybe a little underpowered at this time. Those are two that are good to look at, and that I think that are usable right from the beginning before you even open any packs.
Right, absolutely. And that's great to highlight again. If you are kind of in that power build, or you just need something, say you don't have something in the deck that we had built, all great options. The one thing I want to highlight the turret again, just for the sole fact of how much health it actually has. It does take a while to take down. Do note that it doesn't shoot air. I can't remember if you said that, so I just want to point that out again. Does not target air units. So that is one slight drawback of the spike turret. But besides that, I've seen people that end up moving in. Opponents end up taking the point. There's like one unit left. Dude drops in a spike turret, and that thing stays alive more than long enough for the teammate to come in and bring some more units to bolster the point, and usually ends up taking it back. So spike turret, even and at 90 energy, really fits kind of really well into this build as far as being really low on the front end with a top tier higher end. And then again, as you said, the defensive side of this, sitting one of those actually on the point with Blisterbacks watching over it, and a Bloodfuel Locust is going to make it really, really hard again to take those points. So really ways you could kind of modify these decks. Again, we're just throwing some good builds out with you. I know I've had a lot of success with this deck, mostly because I was lucky enough to get Atriox chosen myself. But yeah, if you enjoyed it, please hit a like, subscribe as we get this channel going, leave your comments down below. If you have something that you absolutely think we should swap in, or you have a completely other deck, Atriox deck build, hit us up, let us know what it is at the bottom. Sloth, any final closing comments?
No, I'm actually really interested to see if we kind of see alternative builds, because I think Atriox, the way his cards are structured, he can have really offensive, really defensive, really aggressive kind of decks. I think there's a couple different directions you can go with him. So I'm interested to see what some other people come up with.
Absolutely. All right, I'm Doc. That's been Sloth. We're Average Gamer Guys. We'll check you guys next time. Thanks for watching.
Bye.